My Father's house, there's a place and Tommy was in Far, Texas, up the road a hour or so. But Tommy used to say that the Rio Grande Valley, the churches along the Rio Grande River, were 100 miles south of the Great Commission. And we're so far off the beaten path, you know. But he and I were good friends. I was sad when Tommy went home to be with the Lord several years ago. But he had a rough life early on, and he suffered with manic depression, bipolar, but back then they didn't really know how to treat it. And so, you know, he just had these mania and this anger outbursts and uncontrollable stuff. His wife left him. He was a preacher at the time. His wife left him, and he went in and out of mental hospitals for 20 years. And eventually he stabilized, got proper medicine, started preaching again. That's when I met him. So he was back in ministry after 20 years. And so I want to read to you, this is an article that Tommy wrote years ago. It's entitled, Down in the Pit. He said, I am among the thousands who attended the 1990 Abilene Christian University lectureship. The highlight for many of these was viewing the new Bible building on the inside or from afar. The beauty of this great structure thrilled especially those who saw it for the first time. The sight that thrilled me the most was quite different. It was the pit in the basement of the university cafeteria where the dishes are washed with a giant dishwasher. This means so much to me because it was there that I began the long journey back to normal health after coming out of state mental hospitals the 20th time from 1963 to 1971. Here I saw young brethren treat me with unsurpassing love as I slowly recovered while washing dishes for $1 an hour. This was quite different from preaching to a congregation over 400 people and being a missionary to the most fertile mission field in the world at that time, Nigeria. I learned much while I was down in the pit. 1, life doesn't end when you're on the bottom. 2, everyone spends some time in the pit. 3, being in the pit is often where God begins to work His plan in your life. 4, getting out of the pit is often very slow. 5, you appreciate the view from the top once you've been at the bottom. And 6, God has a unique way of turning pits into pinnacles. Many that read this article are or have been in some kind of pit. You can come out of the pit the same way. I have full-time preaching in Far, Texas for the past 9 years. And this is for sure. The Lord will be with us in our pits the same way He was with Joseph in prison. He'll deliver us the way He did Joseph. Don't give up. Don't become bitter while you're in a pit. Trust in the Lord. He will not leave you or forsake you. It's an amazing... Warren and I both know Tommy from when Warren was in Weslaco, and I was down in Brownsville. But through all those pits and valleys, Tommy remembered God. He would say, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes he would say, it was not just medicine that delivered me. My deliverance came from God. And at our meetings, Tommy would often say, he would quote Psalm 27, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life, whom shall I dread?" And Psalm 27, verse 4, one of the best verses in the Bible, was Tommy's verse. "One thing I have asked from the Lord, that I shall seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to meditate in His temple." And so Psalm 24 is an amazing verse. Not sure it's possible that I turned off the PowerPoint. Let's see. I got to tell you that if I don't have to mess with the PowerPoint, I'll be happy. Oops, I think I might have to mess with it. Okay, good for me. So the reality is, like Tommy said, all of us go through pits and valleys, peaks and valleys as we go through life. We have times of fear. We have times of anxiety and worry. We have times of depression, despair, miserable. You're welcome to take a whack at it if you want, Kevin. Leave it. We can't hear. I'm just going to leave it off, I guess. I'm just going to leave it off. It's no trabajando. It's not working. Huh? I'll try that. No, it's okay. I was okay not having it, but I saw him. So you let me know if I need to try it again. But we all have good health, and then we have bad health. We have financial security, we have financial insecurity. We have job promotion, we end up unemployed. We have good business, we have bad business. We have peace all around, we have conflicts all around. We are confident and secure, we're insecure and uncertain. We're happy and we're ecstatic, we're depressed and we're lonely. Sometimes life is so good we could jump for joy. Sometimes we just wish we could die. Some turn to drugs and alcohol to escape that reality and don't want to deal with the pain. Some will bury themselves into work. Some will bury themselves into religion. Some will bury themselves into the internet. Some will... Okay, thank you, buddy. Some will bury themselves into entertainment. And football season starting now. So no matter how miserable they are in their life, they're going to be in great shape till the Cowboys lose and don't win the Super Bowl. So Tommy's got good advice that we need to follow his example and follow David's example to turn to God to get to heaven's refuge from earth's refuse. All the garbage that can happen to us in this world. Nobody gets out of this world without having struggles. We all have them. And we all wish we didn't have them. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to avoid the pit in Psalm 27. So let's read it. I'm going to read it out of my Bible. And it's almost the same as that translation. Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? When evildoers came upon me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, they stumble and fell. Though a host encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war rise against me, in spite of this, I'll be confident. One thing I have asked from the Lord, that I shall seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to meditate in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent, he will hide me. He will lift me up on a rock. And now my head will be lifted above my enemies around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Be gracious to me and answer me. When you said, seek my face, my heart said to you, your face, O Lord, I shall seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help, and do not abandon me or forsake me, O God of my salvation. For my father and my mother may forsake me, but the Lord will take me up. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me in a path because of my foes. Do not deliver me over to the desire of my enemies, for false witnesses have risen against me, and such breathe out violence. I would have despaired unless I had believed that I would dwell in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord. Psalm 27 is loaded. Number one, David says when struggles are coming upon me, because he talks about the issues that he's got going on, he says one of the things that he does is, he says, I'm going to commit myself to doing God's will no matter what. So no matter what happens to me in life, I'm going to keep following God. So in verse 8, he says, when you said, seek my face, my heart said to you, your face, O Lord, I will seek. Don't hide your face from me. Don't turn your servant away in anger. In verse 11, teach me your way, O Lord. Lead me in a level path. I mean, he's because of my foes, lead me. So he's got these difficulties, but he's still committed. I'm going to follow God no matter what. And so it may be David, whatever trouble he has, you see like in verse 1, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life. Who shall I dread? When evildoers came upon me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, they stumbled and fell. So David's going through all of these difficulties, but David does not want to be in control of everything. And so if he steps outside of God's will, it's dangerous territory. So rather, he's going to stay focused. Even though I'm hurting, I'm still going to do what's right and follow God, even if it's hard. And therein lies the main difference between Saul and David. You know, to me, Saul's character was he didn't do much right, and out of character sometimes he'd do something right. David, on the other hand, did things right. That was his character. And occasionally, like with Bathsheba, in which he did when he stepped out there, he really got into it. But his character really was to do God's will. Saul was really, you look at Saul's character, not so. Saul was doing stuff his way, and he would follow God when it was easy. And David says, no, even when it's hard, I'm going to follow you. Because the reality is, any spiritual wimp today can follow God when it's easy. Anybody can do that. The question is, will I do what's right when life is hard? When I think, if I go this way, I could get out of this problem, but I might be disobeying God. What do I do? And there's that challenge that I'm going to say, no, I'm going to still do what God says no matter what. And there's a biblical principle from Genesis to Revelation that is this. God will always find a way to bless someone who will do what is right, especially when it's hard. If you do what's right and you can't stay committed, I'm going to keep following God even if it's hard, and I could take this easy way out and get this problem fixed. You say, no, I'm going to do what's right. It might take a while. Somehow, some way, God will bless us if we'll do what's right, especially when it's hard. And that's the last thing people want to do a lot of times, because they think, I can get out of this. I can use money here. I can do this. I can lie. I can do whatever. And they're searching for a solution somehow without involving God. And so the USA Today, now I got this working and I don't follow it. The USA Today, not the newspaper, but the way of life. People want to be spiritual, but they want to do it their way. That's where our culture is. And so they'll try to fit a round peg into a square hole and make life work, and then when it fails, then they get mad at God. And so in the beginning, God created man in his own image. What they do is they create God in their own imagination, and they make God what they want him to be, and then they try to do life that way. What a Christian does, and what David did was, no, I'm still going to do God's will no matter what. I've dealt with a guy recently. He's in his 30s, not married, he's smoking dope. He's depressed, which marijuana can make you depressed. He has medical problems. He buys his girlfriend expensive things that he can't afford. Then he loses his job because of poor work performance, because he's depressed, because he's on drugs, and then he goes to the doctor because he's not feeling well, but it's because he's not taking his medication right, and he's using drugs along with it. And then his girlfriend dumps him because he can't buy her things, and he's in with the wrong woman. She's as fleshly as can be. And so he's dating this woman that is only in it because he's giving her, as long as she's giving her stuff, she's in with him. But then when he can't do that, so everything is crumbling around him. And so he comes and talks to me, but he's wondering why God is treating him this way. And said, Eric, the only one who can fix your problem is God, and you keep running from God. Do things God's way. Try to follow God instead, and quit trying to run your own life. Well, he didn't like that. He's never come back. And Libby says I'm mean to drug addicts and alcoholics, but if they come in and say, I've got problems, and I want to quit drinking and drugging. Will you help me? I'm the nicest guy in the world. But if they're lying and denying, and they've got a wife and children are suffering and so on, then I take the gloves off. And this guy, his mother, is the one who sent him to the church to talk to me. She's a wonderful, faithful, humble Christian woman. And this kid is in his 30s is killing her with his behavior. And so with people like that, I get a little more straight. And a lot of times they don't like it. But I'm not in charge of that. You know, Jesus dealt with people just depending on who they were. Not everybody got a shotgun blast, and not everybody got a pat on the head. You know, just depending if he's dealing with the Pharisees and so on. You know, you brood of vipers, you hypocrites. You know, you're sons of hell. You're going to make converts twice as much a son of hell as you. You know, it depends on who you're dealing with. So Colossians 3, when Paul writes that letter, he says, since you've been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not the things on the earth, for your life is hidden with Christ in God. And when Christ is revealed, then you'll be revealed with him in glory. Christ who is our life, he says in verse 4 of Colossians. Not Christ who is part of our life. We go to church on Sunday. It's Christ who is our life is revealed. Then you'll be revealed with him in glory. So that we're still trying to do God's will. And we're imperfect about it. Nobody gets it all right. But you think God's up in heaven. Oh, no, you got that little thing wrong. You know, get out of here. We would never do that to our children. They're trying to do what's right. And they mess up, you handle it differently than if they're rebellious. So David is committing to doing God's will no matter what, and he ends up being really the greatest king Israel ever had, and ends up, Jesus is a son of David, a descendant of David. The dynasty kicks in with David because it's taken away from Saul. So that doesn't mean that David, when he's committing to do God's will, he's not having any issues. He's crying out. That's the other thing you see. He's committing to do God's will, but he's going to cry out to God, help. Please help God. One of the greatest blessings in the world is studying the Psalms. Psalms teach us how to pray. As I said in the first hour, the Spirit's breathing through Paul's pen as he writes to the Colossians, for instance. And he's writing to the Colossians. In the Psalms, the writer, inspired by the Spirit of God, is a lot of times talking to God. They're prayers. Unto thee, O Lord, I lift up my soul, Psalm 25. And so a lot of times it is talking to God, and I'm asking God things. And so we can learn to pray a lot by going into the Psalms. And so in verses 7 through 9, we see him crying out. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Be gracious to me and answer me. When you said, seek my face, my heart said to you, thy face, O Lord, I shall seek. Don't hide your face from me. Don't turn away from me in anger. You have been my help. Don't abandon me or forsake me, O God of my salvation. He's going through all these difficult circumstances, and he is pouring himself out before God. No reservations, no hesitation, no pride, no self-righteousness, not going to try to fix it himself. He cries out to God. And David knew very well he desperately needed God. And that always touches the heart of God. He's not ashamed to cry out to God. Let's look in, if you have your Bibles, let's go to Psalm 86 for just a moment. I threw the PowerPoint clicker over there. It's not working again, so I'm not going to mess with it. Psalm 86. He says, incline your ear, O Lord, and answer me, for I am afflicted and needy. You know, that's humility before God. God, that touches the heart of God, that we're acknowledging who he is, and when we have problems, we're going to go to him. Do preserve my soul. I'm a godly man. Oh my God, save your servant who trusts in you. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for to you I cry all day long. Make glad the soul of your servant, for to you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. So there's a David lifting up, letting God know where my heart is and that I need you, God. The most important ingredient in retaining our sanity is prayer. Pray. Prayer is a spiritual, emotional tool that God has given us to talk to Him. And God will listen. And so, for me, I have to start out my day that way, reading my Bible, and I listen to Christian music while I read my Bible. And I'm reading through like John right now, but I'll hear a song while I'm listening and reading at the same time. I'm not sure how I do that, but I do it. I'm not sure maybe it's not as effective as it should be. But I'll hear a song about Jesus, and so I'll turn over to this passage, and I'll read the passage that the song is playing. And this morning the song was titled "The Son of God," and so I played it, hit it, clicked on it, replayed it like 4 times, and just kept reading verses about it and thinking about Jesus, reading the passages where they crucified Him. And then I was reading in John, so I went over to Matthew and read there. And anyway, so then I go from there, I go outside and I go for a walk out in God's living room. The moon, there's like a quarter of a moon left, and go outside, walk and talk with God out in His living room. It's dark out, so I'm hoping there's no neighbors that I don't see and hear me talking out loud, think I'm nuts. But I have to do that. People, you must be really spiritual, have those morning devotionals all the time. No, I do it because I'm weak. I have to have God. I have to start my day. I got to get my day set straight. And I would highly recommend doing that before you start your day. Get up 15, 20, 30 minutes earlier and have that time with God before your day starts. I don't know who it was. Was it Martin Luther that said, I had so many things to do today that I had to pray twice as much. And, maybe that's a good thing for us. And so crying out to God for help is a good thing. You look at Hannah in 1 Samuel. I have poured out my heart before the Lord. And then God answers her prayer. Samuel is born, and so on. She's a prayer warrior in the Bible, and not ashamed to bow before God and cry out. And that passage we looked at in Philippians, the first hour, when Paul says, don't worry about things. Be anxious for nothing. Some people would say, yeah, easy for you to say, Paul, you don't have the problems I have. Oh, really? They beat me up and stuffed me inside of a prison, and they're talking about killing me. So I think I can probably match any problem you have. And in the midst of that, Paul is saying, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Really, Paul? Are you doing that? Oh, yeah. Paul says, I rejoice with you all and put you in my prayers. And so Paul has got the secret, he says, about the whole thing. And he's learned to be content in any and every circumstance. And he says, I can do, or I can endure is the idea. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So I just stay close to God. And Paul says, don't be worrying about things. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Turn it over to God. The more we turn these things over to God and we know God's in charge, we give God time. The biggest problem is we don't have patience. So, I'd like to pray for patience and give me now. Give me that patience now, right? But God has a way of working things out, but sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. And so what David did was he just said, I'm just going to keep staying doing what's right and give God some time. And that's what we need to do, just stay committed and focused on that when we cry out to God for help and give God time to answer it. The other thing is for Paul, by the way, is that Paul said, for to me to live is Christ, to die is gain. So what he said goes on to say, if I am alive, I'm going to share Jesus with people, and if I die, I get to go and be with Jesus. Either way, I win. And I think if we have more of that spiritual idea of, eventually this life is going to be over. I don't have to stay here forever. Eventually I get to go and be with God. And hope of heaven is how the Psalm 27 ends. Wait for the Lord means have hope. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord. Give God some time. And in the meantime, keep serving God and giving Him an opportunity to work in our lives. And the third thing that David does is he has confidence. He has total confidence in God to help him. Psalm 27 not only concludes in praise, but it does conclude in that hope that I just mentioned. And in verse 10 is really cool. It's hard to understand, Psalm 27, verse 10. Talked last hour about the Psalms are poetry. So the Jewish songbook, but also they wrote poetically. But we wouldn't know if the words rhyme because they wrote it in Hebrew and some Aramaic. And so, but the Jewish poetry, Hebrew poetry, was they made thoughts rhyme. And I talked about that last hour. So they would say, let's just see where I have a good one. So like in verse 1, the Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? Then he rhymes it with, the Lord is the defense of my life, whom shall I dread? He's saying the same thing twice. He's making the thoughts rhyme, saying the same thing twice. Sometimes he says the opposite. Like I mentioned, oh Lord, how I love your will, and I hate every false way. And it's making it rhyme antithetically. But it's poetry. Psalm 6, you have to be careful taking things literally in the Psalms. You need to use good exegetical reading and studies. In Psalm 6, he says, it's a penitential psalm. He says, every night I make my bed swim. I dissolve my couch with my tears. My eyes wasted away with grief. It's become old because of my adversaries. So if you take that literally, he says, every night I make my bed swim. Literally, that would mean I'm crying so hard that my furniture's floating. If you took it literally. It's hyperbolic, figurative language saying, I am really depressed. I feel terrible about this. Well, in Psalm 27, in verse 10, he says, for my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me up. It's hyperbolic language. Would his mother and father ever forsake him? Of course not. His mother and father are faithful. What he's saying is it's a greater, lesser form of reasoning. That even if my parents deserted me, which they would never do, but even if they did that, which would be the most outlandish thing, that would never happen. But if they did, God would never do that. God will never, never forsake his people, ever. God will never forsake us. Hebrews 13 talks about that. And so David moves past to trust, to be confident, because God has a track record. You think back in your own life. I have a friend that said, if people ask me, does God answer prayers? If I look ahead, I have a question mark sometimes. But if I look back, I say absolutely. So you look back on your own life, things that have happened, and you've prayed about, and how things have turned out. And especially if we're on a spiritual track, God has a way of taking care of us. And we have to remember, what's God's number one goal? God's goal is not to give us heaven on earth. God's trying to give us heaven in heaven. And so sometimes things on earth don't make sense, and we don't like it. And we question God. And some people turn away from God and become atheists. God's not trying to give us heaven on earth. He's trying to give us heaven in heaven. And so we look at our lives, at what's going on right in front of our noses, and we think this physical problem or family problem or health problem, you got to fix that right now. If God doesn't fix it, then I don't know if I trust God anymore. God's saying, I'm trying to get you, I'm looking way out there. If I answer your prayer the way you want it, it's going to be devastating in your faith. You might end up falling away. And so God's doing things providentially without forcing us into heaven. God is providentially working in our lives to help us to get from here to heaven. So we have to stay committed to doing his will, and we have to trust him along the way, even when it doesn't seem right. God will, how could it possibly be right that Jesus ends up our Messiah, the one we followed for 3 years? How can it be that he's nailed to a cross? It's the worst thing in the world. Oh no. Salvation is brought to the whole world because Jesus died on the cross. So what looked like was very bad is actually the best thing in the world. So we don't always know, so we have to not try to guess what God's doing, just deep doing what's right and trust him. And so it is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Help me to trust you, and give me peace inside to keep doing what's right along the way, and give me heaven's refuge from earth's refuse as I keep doing what's right, because eventually the blessings are going to flow if I continue to do what's right. When Tommy was in the pit, he knew God was still with him. I want to reread to you the 6 lessons that he's giving. As a preacher, he had to give us some lessons, And so here's his 6 things that he says. 1, life doesn't end when you're on the bottom. 2, everyone spends some time in the pit. 3, being in the pit is often where God begins to work His plan in your life, right? James writes, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." James says, consider it all joy. God's working. In difficulties of life, God is working. And so he says, when you're in the pit, that's often where God begins to do His work. 4, getting out of the pit is often very slow. Ain't that the truth? 5, you appreciate the view from the top once you've been at the bottom. 6, God has a unique way of turning pits into pinnacles. Tommy is one. Tommy's one. Tommy went home to be with the Lord a number of years ago. And I have no doubt Tommy is in heaven praising God, thanking God for everything in life. I have people in the recovery program that say, I thank God for my addiction because I never knew God before that. And it was when I hit the bottom and my life was in shambles, that's when I finally turned to God. I had no relationship with God before that. And so it sounds terrible, but I am thankful for my addiction, with tears in their eyes saying that. And so we don't want these bad things, because the person was crying out. It was unfair what happened to them in life. And they were angry at God, and they turned to drugs and alcohol. And then, once they finally bottomed out, then they turned to God. Then they realized, oops, God's not the enemy. God's not the problem. I'm the problem. And I need to start trusting in Him. So Psalm 27 is a beauty. Heaven's refuge from earth's refuse is, ain't that the truth? And so I hope the Psalms become part of your life on a regular basis, and they are a blessing to you. So let's have a prayer and we'll close. Father, we are humbled and grateful for who You are and the crazy fact that You'll have anything to do with us. We're thankful we've been created in Your image. We're thankful that You work with us in our lives, and pray that You give us wisdom and courage to continue to follow Jesus no matter what, that we continue to follow Jesus all the way from here to heaven. I pray You bless those who are here and help them, Father. Probably half of them are going through difficulties in life, struggling with depression or resentments or bitterness or pain or physical pain or financial issues, family problems, and we all go through them. And I pray, Father, that You'll bless them and that You'll help them, and that the sun will shine soon in their lives. Thank You for Jesus, our Savior. In His name we pray. Amen. So I don't know what time is the class end. Does anybody know? We still have 15 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? I can sure try to take a whack at it. I don't know. I got it. We used to get his bulletin. So you want a copy of it? All right. I'll give you a copy of it. In fact, you're going to get me your contact info. So I will, I have a clean copy on my computer that I had retyped. And so, yes, sir. Yeah, that's a... Sure.
And see where it could be when we were down in the pit and we reached the pinnacle, where as for your friend, he looked down the pit, so he saw how that helped him. But he
Right.
And so he was, so he's not faith in God.
Well,
But a lot of people, when they get at the pinnacle,
this Sunday I'm preaching in Luke. This Sunday's on the rich young ruler, and when you got it all, rich, young, ruling, you're on top of the world, and Jesus says you need to give away all your money, give it to the poor, come and follow me. And he couldn't do it. See? So when you have everything in life, when you got it all happening for you, you don't need God. That's why it's harder, for a rich man to get to heaven, and easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Because when we have, what we want to do when we have problems, I don't want to go through the problems again. So if I have a problem, I want to try to learn as much as I can spiritually, so that when I come out of it, maybe God will say, okay, I don't need to do that with him again. And it is difficulties in life. If you never have any, then it's pretty hard it's harder to have a relationship with God. And so it takes real spiritual maturity to hopefully we get to that point where, a real spiritually mature person is one who still is obedient and faithful to God when bad things are happening, and when good things are happening, they're praising and thanking God, and they're still faithful. So if we can be faithful all the time, no matter if good or bad is going on, that's a real sign of spiritual maturity. And, like Joseph of Arimathea, a rich man who took the body of Jesus. I didn't know this till a few years ago. I didn't pay much attention. Nicodemus in John 3, he's mentioned 3 times in the Bible. John 3 is when he goes to Jesus at night, almost for sure. He goes there because he's a Pharisee and he doesn't want his buddies to give him a hard time. Second time is when they want Jesus to be arrested, but the guys that go to arrest him say, we never heard anybody talk like this. And Nicodemus speaks. That's the second time we see him in the Bible. He says, shouldn't we hear this guy out before we go attacking him? Are you going to be one of his disciples? You're not one of them, are you? You're not followed from Galilee, are you? Are you? And then, the third time we see Nicodemus? When Joseph of Arimathea takes the body of Jesus off the cross, he and Nicodemus carry the body of Jesus to the tomb. Nicodemus has become a believer. He becomes a disciple. And he's a ruler and a big shot and probably wealthy, but he got it. And so it's a pretty... I like Nicodemus. So, any other thoughts, questions?
what makes a person like Paul? He could have used his memory in the wrong way, and been matched, and he didn't. And David didn't either.
No, Paul. You never see Paul, in spite of the fact that he killed Christians. You never see Paul saying, I have trouble sleeping at night because of what I did. You don't ever see Paul saying that. Paul really got grace. He really understood. God has he says, trustworthy statement deserving full acceptance, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, among whom I am foremost of all. So he saw himself as a sinner, but he never says, I have so many regrets, I just can't move on. And Paul never says that. I think that maybe the biggest thing about Paul that we can learn is that if God forgives us, quit it. Quit beating ourselves up unnecessarily. God's not doing that. Why we do it? That's all pride. When we don't forgive ourselves, 100% pride. 100%. All it is. Selfish pride, thinking about myself. God said he forgives us. We just feel like I should never have done that, so I don't deserve to be forgiven, because I expected more of myself. That's all pride. It's all pride. And if God forgives us, we should forgive ourselves. And I'm speaking hypocritically, because sometimes that happens, where we all kind of do that off and on. Beat ourselves up unnecessarily. So,